How about now? Let's try that now. Let's try our sound now and see how that's working. Sorry about that. Test, test, test. Let's see if we get some sound going out over on this thing. Trying my new XSplit broadcaster now. There you go. We're working good now. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate that. Again, something a little bit new and different for me. So, wanted to go live tonight because they're trying the second attempt to get EverForward off the embankment. You'll see right now that they are set up with a large amount of tugs on site right now. And then you have the two large tractor tugs that came down from New York, the Atlantic Enterprise and the Atlantic Salver. So those two tugs, the Atlantic Enterprise and Atlantic Salver, are right here. And then the long tow tug is the Warhorse 2. So let's talk about why they're doing this and why this situation is being done tonight, because they talked about not doing this again to April 3rd or 4th. So one of the big differences, and I apologize, I'm just looking at my feed, making sure everything is going on. Yep, I apologize for the buffering. Probably got too many things open here, so let's go ahead and change this a bit. Again, first time experimenting with this, so I apologize about that. Let's go ahead and remove this for now, because I don't think we need that right there. There we go. Try to free up some space. So the big thing that's going on right now is the reason they chose for today is because the wind has shifted. So yesterday when they did this, the wind was out of the northwest from Baltimore heading down the bay. And what that meant is even with a 1 foot high tide, which they were hoping to use, it was pretty well negated by the fact that most of the water was being pushed down the bay. Today, the wind's flipped, about 180 degrees different. So wind's coming from the south right now. It's pushing water up the bay. And right around 6 o'clock tonight is going to be the peak time that we're going to see water come into Upper Chesapeake Bay. I pulled up the buoy data for the entrance to Craig Hill Channel, and right around 6 o'clock, they'll have about 15 knot winds coming from the south, and the current or the tide is expected to be about 2 feet above mean low water. I didn't stutter. Mean low water is basically the lowest water you have with an extremely low tide. And what the boats are trying to do, the tugboats right here, again, you can't see EverForward. They don't have a position for her, but she's stretched out kind of this way. Basically, this is the bow over on this end here toward the 5 o'clock position, and her stern will be up here toward the 11 o'clock position. So April and Lynn Moran right here are pushing on the port quarter. I want to make sure I get my port and starboard right. The Z1 is now in position over here on the starboard quarter. She's probably taking a pull. Atlantic Salver, Atlantic Enterprise are pulling on the starboard quarter. And then the big tug, the Warhorse 2, is pulling on the stern. My perspective on this, I don't think this is going to work. I was pretty sure it wasn't going to work yesterday. I don't think it's going to work today, and I'll give you a couple of reasons why I think this is a problem. First off, the mud that EverForward is in, according to the crew down on the barge, the dredge down at Poplar Island, is this mud is like clay. It's like concrete. It's like the nastiest stuff they can imagine. It's taking Oyster Bay 5 to 7 hours to load the barges. It's taking Pyatt about 4 to 6 hours to load barges. These are 4,000 to 6,000 cubic yard barges. It's taking the suction barge down at Poplar Island about 13 hours to pump out that material. That's how nasty that stuff is. And she is aground. Again, she draws 42 feet of water. If she is in 24 feet of water, then all you got to do is do the math. There's 8 feet of that vessel that's buried in the mud. And even with the dredges working down the side of the vessel between, again, remember the channel is right here to the left side of the vessel here to her starboard side. So the channel is basically running right here. They're trying to swing that stern out, get it into the channel so that they can turn the prop over and pull her off using the ship's engines in the stern. But the problem is that she is encased in that bottom right there. And there was a great couple of tweets today by Mike Schuller over at G Captain when the CSCL Indian Ocean, I'm going to do a video on this. I'll talk about some previous ultra large container ships that went ashore. When CSCL Indian Ocean went ashore, it took 17 tugs to get her off. 17 tugs. And that vessel, I should mention, just kind of side bumped her way out of the channel. Ever Forward plowed right out of the channel. So, I mean, she went almost a full ship length out of the channel. And what that means is you get a lot of bottom to get out from there. And yeah, I think A-Track Lower 1 is exactly right there. I think there's just too much surface area of the ship in the mud right now. And so what we're having here is the difficulty in breaking the bottom suction out of it. And if you can't break that bottom suction, and I think she's just encased in mud too. I think there's just so much mud around her that they've got to do a heck of a lot more dredging to get her out. I had a commenter make an excellent point about this too, that if you dredge out too much around the vessel, if you basically dredge all the way around the vessel, then the vessel's on like a plateau. And then you have to worry about when you get the vessel off the plateau, she kind of rolls off. And this is where they're talking about being top heavy. I want to read for you a message. I'm going to post this when I do the update later on with this. This is the latest update from W.K. Webster. W.K. Webster is the agent for Ever Forward. This is the latest. This is update number 7 posted on 30 March 2022. Further to our previous reports, we advise that the attempt was made by salvers to refloat the vessel at high tide on 29 March, yesterday, involving 5 tugs was unsuccessful. Therefore, the vessel remains aground. It is reported that further attempts to refloat the vessel involving additional assistance from 2 anchored barges will be made on 3 to 4 April. Again, that depends on weather and dredging. There's a gale coming in tomorrow and Friday. That's going to preclude probably a lot of dredging for the next couple of days. If those attempts also prove unsuccessful, in other words, if the next set of attempts, not this one today, but the ones on 3-4 April, prove unsuccessful, efforts will be made to partly lighten the vessel by transshipping some containers from the vessel. In this case, the delivery of cargo to destinations will be further delayed. It goes on to talk about general average has not yet been declared, but Evergreen are reported to have advised that, quote, the issue of general average will be evaluated at a later date based on the progress of the refloating operations. If general average is declared, general average security may be required from all cargo interests prior to the delivery of that cargo. Her next port expected to be Norfolk and will be placed to be able to assist in that regard. There are currently no reports of any damage being incurred to the vessel during the last refloat operation, and we understand that experts and the vessel's crew are constantly monitoring the vessel's stability, the condition of the ballast tanks, and fuel tanks for any sign of leakage. I'm really, 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 really shocked that they have not got the fuel off this vessel yet. I think they're concerned about her being too top heavy, so they don't want to get the fuel off. But if this second attempt does not work, and based on images I'm seeing right now, the folks from the Maritime Innovation Safety Lab are down on scene. They're not seeing any indications. Right now, we're not seeing any indications of movement on marine traffic. It's looking like this second attempt may not be successful. And if that's the case, if this second attempt is not successful, then they're going to have to try to reset again. Let's see, a couple of notes here. I just want to read. Jim Bergen, as far as we know, they haven't removed any fuel yet. Must be to combat. Yeah, I think so. I think you're exactly right, Jim. I think that's true. If wind gets right, a 50-mile-an-hour wind could move it. Yeah, the problem you have with high winds in that scenario, too, is it's very difficult for the tugs to operate in high winds. If it gets really, really choppy, the tugs don't operate very well. And that becomes the big issue. You also have to worry about the fact that if she pops loose, she can go right across the channel into the other side. And so you have to make sure that you can control her in high winds in a narrow channel. The crew's on board. The crew has not been removed from this vessel. They're still operating the vessel. They want them on board to operate the plant so that they can basically maneuver the vessel. We know the pilot that was on board during the incident is not on board. However, there is a pilot on board for this. So the pilot boat come out earlier today to drop a pilot off. So we know that there's a pilot, just would be a different pilot that's on board at this time. But again, they will probably keep going. It's 5:41 p.m. right now on the East Coast. Probably go to about 6 or a little bit after that. If we look right now at the weather, actually, I'll pull this up on my own phone so I don't lose this image here because I'm worried about losing an image here. Let me see what the weather situation is right now as she is out there. So the weather is from the south at about 13 knots. So we're seeing it kick up just a little bit more at this point. We knew we'd get it kind of a little bit of a peak here. And then the weather is supposed to die down. Tomorrow, the weather will be right around 25 knots around 2 o'clock. And that would give another kind of period. Unfortunately, right at 2 o'clock, the water level goes down. But we look at high water levels, they'll be over 2 feet around 6 in the morning tomorrow, and then around about 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. But again, I think if they can't get her off now with all this wind and water advantage that they have, they're not going to get her off tomorrow either. And I'm saying this is a really delicate operation. It makes sense to do this. It makes sense to go ahead and try to see if they could pop her loose now before they go into a huge amount of dredging and removing containers. Because understand, taking fuel and containers off this vessel will be a long, laborious process. We're talking about getting a fueling barge out there, get the fuel off her. That they will have to boom her off at that point to do that. Getting the containers out there, getting the containers off are going to involve getting a container crane out there, which is going to be a bit of a problem because they're going to have to find a container crane that will be able to reach high enough. I think I did a rough estimate of the height of her containers at roughly around 120 feet. So you're going to need a container crane with a big boom to get up there. Just not sure they're going to be able to get up there. So yeah, apologize for the quality of this. I think I'm under my CPU has not quite got the memory for this. I think I need to upgrade myself a little bit here. Keep going here. See if there's any things. Are the engines currently running? No, the engines are not running. I've had people who are on scene. They're taking pictures. They're not turning over for a couple of reasons. Number one, while her aft end is buried in the mud there, if you turn the screw in reverse, you're going to throw all that mud forward along the length of the vessel. So, I mean, her stern is facing up here, right around the 11 o'clock position. But as she sucks water in, it's going to throw water down the length of the vessel. It will be just pure mud and water. It'll be nasty and it'll be sucked into the engine. And so they probably wouldn't do that. Did they dredge from both sides of the vessel? Matt, keep going here. Merle, I'm sorry. Did they dredge from both sides of the ship at the same time to equalize the pressure on the bottom to prevent capsizing? No, they dredged around the port bow a little bit because they wanted to be able to pivot the vessel. So along the length of the port side, the side furthest away from the channel, they did not. But up around the bow, they did, because what they want to do is pivot on the bow and swing her out. So they'll make sure to kind of do it that way. Max, are cargo ships double hulled? I think you mean double hulled. Yeah, most of them will have double bottoms. They won't have double hull on the exterior, on the sides of the vessel, but they will on the bottom. Why no big tug pushing straight back in addition to the other tugs? Pushing doesn't work. Pulling works. What you want to do is get the pull on the lines. You want to get that kind of that snapping motion, pulling on the lines. Pushing, really what the April and Lynn Moran are doing right there they're providing a little bit of push, but I got to tell you, these tugs are all too small. They need a lot more tugs out there. And what these tugs are doing is, should she pop out and come off the bottom, they're there to haul back to prevent the vessel from going across the channel. Let's keep going here. See what else you guys got here. Let's see. Is the hired pilot in deep crap? Yeah, probably so. I think it is. Can they lift with airbags? No, airbag. You can't get under the ship. You're not going to be able to get under the ship to kind of. Some people have talked about putting like straps underneath the vessel to lift it up. Understand, this vessel is about 150 feet wide, and then you got to go down 8 feet of mud and then across. And again, this stuff's like concrete. You're just not going to be able to get across. Let's see. I saw one thing they put over that car. So when they did Golden Ray, they cut her into pieces with what's called the VB-1000, and they used basically anchor chain to cut the vessel. But that's not a prospect we want to get into. That's worst case scenario doing that. Let's see. Paul O'Neill. Yeah, I know, Paul. I can't think of anything else to say, but to free the vessel, maybe I will rephrase myself here. Why not try and pull the ship out of the same way she went in instead of trying to pick? The problem with pulling her out the way she came in, which is where Warhorse 2 is. So they are trying to do that a little bit. The problem is you're basically pulling the ship over land the whole way. And because the stern is only about a stern width off the channel, it's better to try to pull that stern, kind of hop her over into the deeper water. The other problem is pulling her back out the way she came will pile mud up against the stern even more. Put something heavy in the sand and pull it towards you. It's going to pile up sand in front of it. Is there any reason why firefighting? Yeah, they have vessels out there. There's a whole range of vessels out there providing protection. The Z1, which is a firefighting vessel, identified. It's also a tug. But they have the Coast Guard out there. They had a Navy patrol boat out there yesterday. They were providing just area control to keep sightseers away from the area. So no, there's no reason for worried about that. How much depth would the crane need to be able to operate? Oh, the crane would be able to operate in just a few feet of water. So it would be, you put it on a barge, mount it on a barge, and then you would lift it. The problem you have is it takes literally 2 minutes to offload a crane pier side with ship-to-shore cranes. With a crane on a barge, it's going to take multiple minutes to just get it hooked up and then pull the container off and then drop it onto a barge. So it'll take a pretty long time to do that. Let's see. Merle here talking. Having done towing myself, pushing with that kind of force would be uncontrollable if she moves. Yeah, I agree with that. Horatio Nelson, great name, Horatio Nelson. I haven't followed this story very closely. Have they lightened her more? No, they have not lightened her. And this is the big question I have: is they haven't taken fuel off and they haven't taken containers off. Blue Diamond need Alp tugs. I agree. One of the big things is if you look at what Ever Given took to come off, it took 2 massive salvage tugs to pull tugs. What you're seeing right here, to kind of zoom in here. There we go. So one of the things that happened with Ever Given, so like Atlantic Enterprise and Atlantic Salver up here, if you look at those vessels, what they do is they're just pulling. But in the case of Ever Given and a lot of other salvages, they throw anchors out and then they pull on the anchors, they pull on their stern winches, and then they use their engines. So they're really using 3 modes of power at the same time. What these tugs are doing are just using their engines. So you're not getting as big a pull as you normally could. Let's see. Not sure why the DVR is turned off for the stream. I apologize. I'm just doing this for the first time. So I apologize. This is my first time trying a XSplit simultaneous broadcaster. New for me. But I thought I'd pop on for just a few minutes here and give you the update. I'll be doing a video tomorrow that breaks down this entire attempt in some more detail and talking about doing a live stream, a more successful live stream than this, perhaps on Friday, and recapping this week's events in some more detail. And I also had some great questions being fed to me, and I think I'm going to open up a thread on my discussion board page on my YouTube channel to see what questions you want addressed, so I'm not answering questions during the on-stream or reading during the on-stream, so that I can be a little bit more efficient with this. All right, Again, no movement, and we're coming up on 6 o'clock here pretty soon. I envision that they'll keep trying to pull on her for probably till about 7, maybe even 8 o'clock. But by that point, your tide's going to start coming down, water levels will start coming down, and even the winds are going to start dissipating at that point. So what we may see is them kind of calling it an evening here fairly soon and basically breaking it down. I think the high winds are a bit of an issue going forward. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the ship during the high wind. She's going to move a little bit. She's going to rock on that bottom a little bit. And one of the things we got to start worrying about is that hull bottom taking some damage. Even though it's pretty clean clay and sand, it's compression of the hull. So that's something that needs to be worried about. All right. I appreciate everybody tuning in and trying my experiment here with XSplit Broadcaster in the stream. I've never done this before, so I apologize for any issues with it. Again, college professor, not TV, YouTube producer, still working on getting this done. So until our next broadcast,